The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Yes, come to your cordless, everybody, from downtown Minneapolis. It's Monday night, September 30th, 2024, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. I am Jim Peters. This is episode number 161. If you're keeping score at home, hope you had a good weekend. It's been very warm here in Minneapolis. Matter of fact, we had today's the last day of September, and apparently we had the warmest September on record here. It got up to about 83, 84 today, I think, and that's been kind of the way it's been. And the average temperature for this time of year, is about 68, 69. So I'm enjoyed it immensely. Anyway, what do we got going on? I'll tell you, we got it going on. What we got going on is tonight. It's Phone Fun Monday. You guys call in now, and this might be a special one because this is basically the last one we're ever going to have. Now, we're not. I gotta preface this. We're not. The show's not going away at all. Matter of fact, hardly. It's the opposite. But after tomorrow night, which we're doing the debate panel after the vice presidential debate, like we have several times this year so far. After tomorrow night, we are taking a whole week off. We're coming back on Wednesday, October 9th, and the show is going to be basically completely different. And what I mean primarily is that this is a video podcast right now. Matter of fact, today is International Podcasting Day. Ha ha ha. Well, wouldn't you know it? It's been a video podcast, and it's a little video TV show, and we've structured it that way. And I got this little great little background back here, green screen, all this sort of stuff. When we come back on October 9th, it's going to be primarily a radio show. It's going to be a radio show with a video feed. Now, you would say, well, what's the difference? The difference is subtle, but still, for what our purposes, is very important. I can't tell you what our purposes are yet. I will be able to announce that hopefully in the next few weeks. We are transferring the show to basically primarily audio, even though it's still going to be on YouTube and it's still going to be on Rumble. All that sort of stuff it's not going to look the same, and frankly, it won't look quite as good either, because we're switching the emphasis from the audio to the video. So, the reason we're taking the week off is because we've ordered a whole bunch of equipment here, and we're upgrading the sound of our show basically so we can get on terrestrial radio. That's what's going on. I can't tell you more details on that, but that's what's happening here. So tonight's basically might be the last phone fun Monday we ever have. So if you want to call in, numbers on the bottom of the screen. The audio line is 563-999-3435. You can call in with a webcam, and there's nothing too, I gotta tell you. We're going to can that. When we come back on October 9th, we're no longer going to take video phone calls. We are supposedly the very first talk show in America to ever do this. Talkers Magazine said that in a wonderful article they wrote about us 2 weeks before we went on the air a year and a half ago. That we're the first program that ever took live video phone calls from the public. But to be honest, and I've said this before, it really hasn't worked out. And the reason I can tell is there's two reasons. People aren't used to doing it, even though it's ridiculously simple. It's easier than making a FaceTime call. You go to a page on our website, jimandnight.com/call. There's a big blue button at the top of the page. You press the button, you get to a preview screen, you get to check your camera and mic, you push the join button at the bottom, and you're in the queue. It's super simple. But people aren't used to doing it. There's that. And the other thing I realize is that people, when they call up, they don't want their face on the screen. Most people like the anonymity of not, duh, people can see you. So they will maybe figure out who you are. And so in that sense, it's completely unlike regular social media where you can go and trash people to your heart's content and no one ever actually knows your real name, or your face. But here they know your face. And I've come to the conclusion people don't like that. So since we put in the call-in line, which I think that was the first week in February, we have had almost exclusively call-in, audio call-in, phone call-in, uh, guests. I don't, I don't even know if we've had even one or two people call in via webcam since February. I don't even know that. It's been a dearth. So we're canning it. Well, besides, we're basically canning the primary picture anyway. So I'm going to reiterate this. You'll be able to see us on Rumble and YouTube. There will be a camera. You'll be able to see us, but there won't be all these fancy graphics and all these changes and all this sort of stuff. It's basically just going to be a camera in our studio aimed at me while I interview guests. That's what it's basically going to be. And in most instances, we won't even have the guests on the screen either. It's going to be entirely audio. They may not thrill you, but for our purposes, it's going to work out very well. So I'm very happy about that. So that's tonight. Tomorrow night, as I said, we got a debate panel. That's actually the month in review panel that's pushed off a day. Usually they come on the last Monday in the month. And so the last Monday's tonight. Tomorrow's the vice presidential debate, Vance and Waltz. And so those guys are coming on afterwards. We're going to be starting as soon as the debate is done. It's scheduled to finish at 10:30 Eastern time. Excuse me, 10:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Central, 7:30 Pacific. That's when it's scheduled to end, and that's when we're going to start. So good time we have. But and then we're taking a week off. You think it's not a vacation? It isn't. We're basically, I've talked about this in the past. We share this studio with another company, and we are going to be part of this thing is we're going to be moving out of here, and so and that's also. Oh, and I can't forget this. We're going to be starting permanently 2 hours earlier. Our start time on October 9th permanently will be 9 PM Eastern, not 11. 9 PM Eastern, 6 PM Pacific. That's gonna be our 8 PM Central. That's gonna be our starting time when we come back. So all that stuff. So you call us up tonight if you want to talk. I'd love to talk to you. Got a lot of news going on. Got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff. Like I said, today's International Podcasting Day. We got that. So, and there's another thing too that, as a matter of fact, I'd be curious to see if this happened to you today, and maybe I don't think it's still happening, but around 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time this morning, millions of Verizon customers lost their cell service. I guess there was actually cell signal. People were saying they were getting bars on their phone, but they couldn't connect to anything, and it wasn't just audio calls; it was text messages too. And they don't even know how many people it's affected. It appears to have affected millions, if not all the customers Verizon has in the entire United States. It might have, and I assume they fixed it at this point. I actually don't know. I didn't check. But I mean, if that happened to you, call me up too. 563-999-3435. Those people in the weird thing about Hurricane Helene is that it made landfall in Florida, and okay, that's terrible. This is one of the very few times this hurricane did more damage inland than it did actually where it landed on the coast. That hardly ever happens. So it landed in Florida in the Panhandle and moves up the Appalachian part of the United States and gets to North Carolina, and all hell breaks loose. I mean, I've seen the pictures. You've probably seen the pictures. People say it's way worse than even the pictures seem to indicate. It's it's been described as biblical disaster, apocalyptic. It's just awful. Now, and now the amazing thing is too, and this is where I get into the election stuff. Uh, basically, it looks like both Biden and Harris have basically kind of ignored this. They put out statements, la di da. Are they going there? They said later, you know. Now, this is the scary thing. David Strom and Hot Air, our good friend who's on the show regularly, posted this morning, and he says that there is talk that the Biden administration is not going to send North Carolina any federal aid at all. Now, like I said, that may be a rumor. I don't. It sounds unbelievable to me, but more unbelievable things have happened. I mean, I want to point to 2 years ago, East Palestine, Ohio. Uh, they got very little aid, and the president didn't come for over a year. I mean, those people are screwed. And I don't know. I'm a conspiracy theorist. You talk to me, tell me if you think I'm nuts, because I'm nuts. Uh, it occurred to me, I'm one of these people, and apparently the majority of Americans still think this. The last poll I saw said that 60% of Americans still think the Democrats cheated the 2020 presidential election. Over 60%, over half. And I do too. I still think they cheated. I have a very hard time with the fact that Joe Biden, this nobody that nobody seems to care about to this day still, got 81 million votes, more votes than Barack Obama. I can't wrap my mind around it. I have said I think the evidence of the fact that they cheated is the fact that during the entire campaign, with one exception, 5 days before the election, Joe Biden didn't draw more than 200 people to any campaign event. Not a single one, except for one, with one exception, 900 people in Pennsylvania 5 days before the election. And this has continued into his presidency. No one comes to see this guy. Nobody. I mean, you probably saw before he dropped out in May and June, he was going around to quote unquote campaign events where there were 50 people. I mean, there's memes online all over the place of the difference between Trump entering a restaurant and Biden entering a restaurant. It was Trump enters a restaurant like a rock star. People go nuts. Biden, nobody noticed him, even though he had his full entourage and everything. It's like nobody wants to talk to the guy. I mean, it is amazing. I can't say, I won't say that Americans hate Joe Biden, but they certainly don't care about him at all. Which is and so then they need this debate to figure out whether he should drop out or not. It's really, really funny. If he hadn't exposed himself during that debate in some fashion where they managed to cover it up, or they didn't do it at all, uh, he'd still be the candidate. And I don't know if you've seen pictures of him lately or video. He can barely walk and talk. It's really mind-bogglingly awful what's happened here, and the press just keeps constantly everything's normalized. Like, this is not normal, folks. This isn't. This is why the 25th Amendment was instituted, is to take incapacitated people out of the office of president and vice president. This is the reason, and they should have used it, and they didn't. I mean, I don't want Kamala being president for even 6 months. I don't, but the fact of the matter is they should have used it. They really should have. So Strom is writing this morning. He said there's rumors floating around that Biden is not going to send. They're not going to send any aid to North Carolina, which is crazy. Meanwhile, Donald Trump goes down there this afternoon. He brings a whole bunch of stuff, like a plane load of supplies, on his own dime too. He's not the federal government, God knows. You know, Now he's a billionaire, but still, I mean, it's like, I mean, he paid for it. You know, and there's another article. It was the New York Post today about the fact, and this really needs to be addressed too, and that is that the fact that Joe and Hunter Biden have been ripping off the American public for years, and nobody seems to care a whit about it, not a whit. Whereas Donald Trump donated his entire salary while he's president to various charities every month. Whatever the check was, he signed it over to a different charity. He took no money, and he lost money, a shitload of money, being president. I mean, he's the only guy who's ever been president in 230, 40 years, whatever it is, who actually lost money being president. And that's because there's only, with the last count I saw, there's only about 1,000 billionaires in the United States. There's the last count, there's only about 2,600 on the entire planet. And this is another thing too. So the Democrats say, we got to tax these billionaires their fair share. It doesn't matter. There's so few of them. Do you know no, this money does not add up, you know? There's 1,000 billionaires, not even that, I think it's like 950 or whatever it is, the current count in the entire US. The last I saw, matter of fact, a friend of mine actually called me after a show I did a few months ago and corrected me on this. I said there were 6,500 people in America with assets over $100 million. He said it's 9,500, but he said, "Okay, you're in the ballpark," and I am. You know, so there's 10,000 people in America who have assets over $100 million. Well, it doesn't matter how much you tax it. That money you can make billions of dollars off that, and right now the federal government plows through billions of dollars in like 5 days. I don't even think it's that. I have to sit down and figure it out. There's no money to be gained by taxing these people. There isn't because there's so few of them, and nobody had ever talks about this ever. And the thing is, I understand the Democrats don't want to talk about it because they want to hide it. I don't understand why the conservative press doesn't mention it either. It's just I don't know. Sometimes I just think I just want to like put a gun in my head. Like so. Any rate, so the Trump went down to North Carolina today, and he brought a bunch of supplies, and I'm thinking that they're and I never finished my thought. I'm just off on a tangent all the time about East Palestine, Ohio. I'm starting to think that might be proof that they did cheat the election. I've always said that if they did, I put money on the fact that Biden actually didn't know about it. He was never told, or maybe in a kind of sense that stated didn't register. You probably, if you're going to do that, you probably wouldn't want to tell the actual candidate because of plausible deniability. They can actually say, "I don't know," and they're telling the truth because they don't know. But how could you treat East Palestine, Ohio, and by extension, the entire state of Ohio so badly and still expect to win re-election? And I thought, well, you do that if you knew you were going to win. And the way you know you were going to win is if somebody was cheating somewhere. I actually thought about that. I mean, he didn't go down there for over a year. There was sent almost no money, almost no help. I mean, these people, they were just treated like crap. And why if you were running for reelection at that time, Biden certainly thought he was going to. If you're running for reelection, why would you do that? I mean, what is the point of doing that? I thought, well, maybe that's because you know you're going to win. I don't know. Just a thought, folks. Just a thought. So I've been saying during this last few months that I thought, people talk the October surprise in elections, and I'm saying there was going to be one, and it was going to be at the detriment of the Democrats at the time, Biden, now Harris, and it wasn't going to be manufactured. That's what I was, and my prediction has been for quite a while that it was either going to involve something in the Middle East with the war, or something economically. Now look at this. This is what's happened here. This is really kind of amazing. I might be right on both bouts. I had an either or thing going. I think in terms of I might be right on both. First of all, the war in the Middle East is ramping up big time now. Uh, Israel is preparing, as of this evening, to do major strikes in Lebanon. They've done kind of minor strikes up to this point, but they're talking about major ramping up. And that might blow the whole thing open. I mean, we might be on the serious. I don't know. I don't like to exaggerate. We might be on but people say we might be on the brink of World War III, and we might. But even if we aren't, they're going to have a hell of a time over there. That's all. At some point, I can't imagine that somebody's not going to try to drop bombs on Iran. I don't. I don't. They're funding all this. They're the bad guy. Everybody knows it. Everything else is by proxy. I'm just thinking maybe Israel just say, "Oh, screw it," and try to take them out. You know, so that we have that going on as of tonight. Also, as of tonight, matter of fact, this is going to happen in about 40 minutes. The longshoremen on the east coast of the United States are going to go on strike unless something happens in the next hour. That's going to happen. That's going to shut down all the shipping, on the maritime shipping on the east part of the United States. Now, And this occurred to me. The timing of this is kind of suspicious because if you wanted to screw the Democrats up, not only would you do this, but this is exactly precisely the time you do it. Because assuming this strike lasts a while, like 2 or 3 weeks, actually, even if it's over in a couple weeks, there'll be enough damage by the week before the election, all hell will break loose with the economy. I mean, even if it's just for a while. And I thought, did they plan this? You know, the Democrats at this point are not really they're not fond of and are not really loved by the working class people in the United States, which is really fascinating because that is in the last 20 years, 30 years completely turned over. They used to be the class of the working class, the party of the working class people. They aren't anymore. Now the Republicans are. And I thought, well, geez, okay, if you wanted to time this, that's exactly when you'd go on strike, is like the 1st of October with 5 weeks left till the election. Because it's this strike will take 2 to 3 weeks for the effects to be felt. And I thought, "Oh, well, that's interesting. Do they do this deliberately?" That's my question. So let me tell there's another thing I want to point out, speaking about timing too. These figures that came on Friday from ICE. ICE says, they've said that there's 425,000 criminals they released in the United States, and I'm thinking, did this occur to you? How do they know? So that makes me think the same thing. I don't think the Border Patrol people are that fond of the Democrat and the Biden administration, and if you want to stick it to them, it'd be perfect just to make up some figures and put them out. Because who's gonna argue with them? They're ICE, you know? And this is, generally speaking, we all know this, that it's the, federal government bureaus are aligned toward the Democrats. I mean, it's liberal play all the way. The DOJ, the FBI, everything's been pro-Democrat. But I could see ICE because of especially that thing that happened with the whipping of the horses and the supposed whipping of the migrants that happened in what was it, late 2021, where Biden actually literally threw some of the um, Border Patrol agents under the bus. I mean, it was terrible. They never apologized, nothing. And I could see this being, the FU moment where they release these figures because I was thinking, how do you know how if these are people that weren't caught or people that have been, released, well, I suppose then maybe but how do you know these figures are accurate? I thought about, did that occur to anybody other than me? I know. So, any rate, yeah, I wonder same thing. I wonder if somebody's effing with the administration here, and God knows. I mean, there's you're talking about there's no love lost between any of these people. So, yeah, that's really interesting too. I think they said, and even the counts that they've released that 13,000. The exact thing was 13,099 murders have been let into the United States through the border. Through the porous open border. Well, and that figure sounds it sounds almost made up. 13,099. This is just one less than 13,100, you know? Yeah, that could be coincidence. I That's the thing. I mean, I'm a skeptical, paranoid person at this point, and I don't understand how they would know how many people were actually got away uh, from the border patrol agents, but supposedly they say they do, and they said there's 425,000 criminals they let into the U.S. And like Greg Gutfeld said tonight, actually, I just happened to catch the beginning of the show before we started here. He said you'd think that would be a bipartisan issue. You'd think it would, and he's right. You would think it would be. I don't know. The New York Times endorsed Kamala Harris today, but somebody said it was the weakest endorsement they'd ever done. Now you have to understand, I think I'm right about this, about the fact that the New York Times has never endorsed a Republican for president in its entire history. This is going back almost 200 years, I think. But they said I didn't actually read the endorsement, so but the people commentators online have said it's they basically said you should vote for Kamala Harris because he's not Donald Trump. That's basically what they said. They gave no real reasons. There was no enthusiasm, nothing. It was like the lamest endorsement you could get, but they did, and so that you're kind of expecting that. But then again, the Teamsters didn't endorse a candidate. That's the first time they haven't endorsed a Democrat in 40 years. I think they endorsed Reagan. I think that was the last Republican they endorsed, and so there's that. You know, it's um we talked about this. When did I talk about this? When again was it? I can't remember. If it was Strom or Jeff Meyer who was on. We were talking about the fact that um if you follow the polls on the Real Clear Politics average and all that sort of stuff, which is the average of all the polls, it looks like it's neck and neck. But every single other anecdotal measure seems to go in Trump's favor. So, and a lot of people have been talking still. We're assuming there's going to be no cheating. Now, this time we can assume that because the what's quietly happened is that the Republican National Committee, there's like 100,000 lawyers plastered all over the country. They're going to have people, observers at every single voting booth of any consequence all over the U.S. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people apparently they got to make sure this thing is not cheated. You know, so the, uh, every single anecdotal evidence seems to be going Trump's way, and I'm not the only one who've noticed this. I'm not the only one who's written about it. Now I don't write; I talk. That's what I do. My friends they write. So, but other people, Hot Air, Jazz Shaw, Ed Morrissey, he's been writing about this. Strom writes about this. Has been writing about this all the time. At Red State, he's there's you can't. Especially if you go by the battleground states, every calculation that's been done right now puts Trump way ahead in the electoral count. And even the television networks, even like MSNBC has said this. CNN said they said today that Kamala is doing worse with union people than any um, the Democrat has done. I think they said generations, 40, 50 years. She is not getting any union support. She isn't. Now, she may be getting some official endorsements, but not the rank and file. That's what happened with the Teamsters. The Teamsters made their poll of their members public, and it was 60-40 Trump. And so, I guess they decided they could not go against precedent and actually endorse Trump, which pissed a few people off. But at least they didn't endorse terrorists. They decided to endorse no one, but because it was obvious that their membership did not want that. So, man, this is going to be fascinating. I voted today. I went to vote here in Minneapolis and Minnesota. We're one of the three earliest voting states. It's crazy. I don't think you should be allowed to vote 5 weeks before the election. I think it's nuts. They're going to let me do it. I'm going to do it. Everyone's saying, well, they want the Republicans to get out and vote early. I'm doing my part. I did it. I think the polls open on Thursday or Friday of last week, and I went today. So it's why? It's just absurd. They keep talking about, and not only that. Now I got to say, here in Minnesota now, and also my friend Tim Conaway, who's a regular, he's going to be on the panel tomorrow night. He's an election judge in the state of Minnesota, and he really takes affront to the fact that he thinks there's cheating I know he's right here in Minnesota. In Minnesota, the system is set up; it'd be almost impossible to cheat. They have checks and balances and redundancies, and also we have by far the best electronic system, and that is there's paper ballots. You color in the little circles. You run the paper ballot through the counting machine, and the machine counts, but you still have all the ballots, so you can run them again. or you can count them by hand, which is like the perfect way to do it. And also, none of the machines are hooked up to the internet. That's crazy. I have to tell you, as a computer programmer, that's just freaking nuts. You don't want any of these machines hooked up to the internet ever. People say, "Oh, no one can, they can't get in." Oh, bullshit. I, I could have a contest with 15-year-olds to see which of them can get in the fastest. It's like absurd. I mean, I don't understand. Don't people understand how this works? If you have a machine hooked up to the internet, someone can get into it. You know, it's like oh, we have our servers. I don't want to get into too much technical security stuff here. The servers for our show and the servers I've run in the past. I've run a lot of big name websites. It is kind of interesting because when Trump was proposing the the border wall, my first reaction is, well, it's not the best. Oh, okay, fine, but that's not the best way to spend money. It's like you don't want a more of a high tech solution. That's kind of stupid. And then he pointed out, and then I realized we do the exact same thing with servers. He said, no, you got to do the basic stuff shit because that keeps 95% of all the riffraff out. And he's right. That's what we do with the servers. There's all sorts of very basic steps you can take to keep people from cracking into the server, and we do them all. And 98% of the time, that's what people try. But you still have to do the really sophisticated stuff too. You do. And if someone is determined enough, they can get into anything. Now, they might need a lot of money to do that. Like for example, it if you run a Linux server, which almost all, not almost all, but the vast majority of the servers hooked up to the internet are Linux. It's hard for me to get this across to you, but if you don't have a password, you can't get in. Period. These The Linux operating system has been refined over the course of 25 years. They don't change it. It's not like Windows where every 3 years they rewrite it from scratch. They've been refining it, refining it, refining it. It's impossible to get in without a password. You can't do it. There's no way. But there's first of all, so you get a password, that's called social engineering, and it works like this. If you're like let's say you're trying to get into a major bank. I'm not even gonna name one because I don't want to think I'm encouraging anybody. You want to get into a major bank. You make a bunch of phone calls to the headquarters, like, and you say, and you're not there. But you say, I'm Ted down on the fourth floor in IT, and I need the password for server X, Y, and Z. Do you have it? And you'll get people say no, and then you got smart people who know this. I'm not going to give it to you, but if you make those calls long enough, you will get that password. And once you get that password, you're in, and then it doesn't matter at that point. You can do whatever you want. That's the primary way it's done. The other way, which cost a boatload of money, but is possible, and that is you can get a quantum computing server or quantum computer to crack the password, and and it'll take it a few seconds. But even renting time on a quantum computer costs a fortune. But it'll work if you can get your hands on one, or even a few, a few minutes on one, rent it or something. You could there's passwords. If you have a 22 character password, which would take a regular digital computer maybe 100 or 120 years to crack, the quantum computer can do it in 3 or 4 seconds. So, yeah, you could do that too if it's possible. So, I mean, if someone's determined enough, you can't keep them out. That's all there is to it. But how many, the amazing thing is, for those of you who grew up watching the James Bond movies like I did, and all those evil genius criminals, they don't exist. If you're that smart, you can make a boatload of money legally. You don't have to go into crime. No, those people, as a rule, they do not exist. Now, every once in a great while, somebody does it fits that bill, but it's very, very rare. So no, so you can, if you know what you're doing, you can keep people out. But Trump had the point, and that is, well, you put the wall up to keep the basic riffraff out, and it works. And he's right. You still got to do more. That's not the only thing you can do. And I don't know why I didn't think of that. It's like the parallels to what he's doing and what I was doing are very similar, and it never occurred to me that, because 'cause I'm stupid, that's why. Alright, I gotta address this. This guy drives me nuts. John Kerry, is going around telling people now, I wanna point out here, he no longer has any formal role in the federal government. Apparently, he's just flying around doing this because he thinks it's his either God-given right or responsibility to save the world from climate change, which I would like to point out once again doesn't exist. No, let me be precise. Global warming does exist. It's very real. The world's been warming up for 300 years. Humans are not really contributing to it. That's the thing. Now, I know that people tell me, well, I had lunch with an old friend of mine a couple of weeks ago. She knows I do this show, and I happened to mention this. I said, well, climate change is actually a giant hoax. And once again I had to qualify it because I'm not talking about global warming is not a hoax. Climate change, human induced is, and she just looked at me and said, "Well, I have to tell you that's not what I've heard." And I said, "Yeah, you're right. That isn't what you've heard. I know that. I know it isn't what you heard." But they've always said follow the science for years and years and years. Well, I did. I did follow the science to the end, and the science says there's nothing to this from the humans contributing to it. And they know why the temperature of the world is going up. It has to do with the Earth's revolution around the sun. It has nothing to do with well, very little with us what we're doing here on Earth. Now I saw something the other day, and there is a possibility that if you drag this out long enough and we pollute long enough, I'm talking about like maybe 100 years, that maybe we might start having an effect, you know. But we're not polluting that much. And the other thing that drives me nuts, and Patrick Moore is on this show. He's a famous climatologist, former founder of Greenpeace, got out because he decided that this was one of the issues that it was that the climate change is bullshit. He's a climatologist. Um, he said one of the things that he's been talking about is that his big deal is, and my big deal too, and that is this thing about carbon dioxide. If you listen to the climate change people, you get the impression that carbon dioxide is evil. And not only is it not evil, it's highly beneficial to the planet. We need it. It's a positive, not a negative. And then Vivek Ramaswamy wrote this book came out like a couple weeks ago, and he did a chapter on this, and he said something also that Patrick Moore and other people have pointed out, scientists have pointed out, and that is if the temperature of the world is going up, it might be a net positive. It's probably a net positive. We are at 400 parts per million carbon dioxide level on the planet right now, and if it goes below 150, everything dies. We all die. This is one of the lowest rates of carbon dioxide in human history. So we actually need more carbon dioxide. And if we and yeah, it's not pollution. So here's the really weird thing on this too, and this really bothers me. But the thing is, nobody wants a dirty planet. I don't. I don't want any pollution. We got to get rid of the pollution just because we shouldn't be breathing pollution for no other reason. It doesn't matter whether it's contributing to global warming or not. It doesn't matter. We do not need pollution in our lungs. We do not need pollution in our air. We need to get rid of that stuff. But that said, no, the humans are not contributing any major effect to climate change. But John Kerry wouldn't know that if you ask him. I had Mark Morano on the show. Mark's on like CNN all the time. He's like one of the primary people that the cable news channels goes to when they want a climate change denier, quote unquote, you know. And I asked him, I said, "Chris, is like, is John Kerry's problem? Is he stupid?" And basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, what Mark Morano says, yeah, he's stupid. And he is. He's one of the stupidest people who's ever worked in Washington, ever. I mean, the guy's just a dolt. I don't think he has an IQ of 100 even. But he grew up in a rich family and he married a bunch of rich women. and he has all oodles of money, and he doesn't care what I think. So, but he should care what you think. So, but he doesn't. He's going to save the planet. The planet's going to burn up, and he's going to save it by flying his private jet all over the world. Do you know how much? They're talking about carbon footprints, and like I said, carbon is not a bad thing. But if you're talking about carbon footprints by his own register, by his own measurement, those planes put out like 80 times more carbon than any regular human does in a year in one flight. It's mind-boggling. And then he says he's saving the planet. Oh yeah, that's good. Now there's other one thing I want to address here too. Jen Psaki has Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, on her show on MSNBC, and she talks about oohing and eyeing over this guy and talks about how he is reshaping the idea of masculinity in the United States. First of all, no, he isn't. That's bullshit. That's crap. And secondly, we don't want it. Uh, there's a whole bunch of men in this country who are getting tired of the talk about toxic masculinity. No, no. As a matter of fact, there's a theory, and I'll be interested if this happens um, on election day. Tyrus, on the former ex wrestler, on Gutfeld, and he has said this, and he's been going on. A lot of people have that there's going to be an outpouring of men to come out for this election, which means Trump will win because right now the electorate is split. The reason, you like somebody said, in a normal cycle, Trump should be 20 points ahead. He's not 20 points ahead because a lot of people hate him, but it's also because pretty much every woman on the planet seems to want to vote for Kamala Harris. And the terrible thing is, in the polls, NBC poll that came out last week, they had Harris winning by 5 points, but they polled 9% more women than men, which is how you can get around that if you want to cheat the poll, you know. So the numbers from the people they polled are legit, but the people they polled are not legit. The percentages are not legit. But there's a lot of people who think that men are going to come out in droves to vote for Trump because they're tired of all this crap. Now, when was it 1999 when Jesse Ventura won the governorship of Minnesota? That's what happened here. There's a whole bunch of people they didn't go to they didn't talk to pollers or anything, and a lot of these people had never voted before. Even they went to the polls and voted for Ventura and quietly left and didn't talk to anybody, and that's how he won. That was a fascinating election because so Ventura ran on the Reform Party ticket, which was what's his name? Oh God, the guy who ran for president. He got 19% of the vote. Anyway, Jesse Ventura is the only single person from the Reform Party that's ever won any sort of legitimate political contest. So it was him, and then there was Norm Coleman, who was the mayor of St. Paul as a Republican, and Skip Humphrey, the son of Hubert Humphrey, who ran as the Democrat. And Humphrey was widely expected to win. I mean, it's kind of like the thing with Hillary in 2016. And not only did Humphrey not win, he came in third. And he ran maybe the worst campaign I've ever seen. I mean, they did everything wrong, everything. And I think that's because he thought he had it in the bag so much it didn't matter. Well, it did. And the same thing happened to Hillary. Hillary has been talking now for 8 years, trying to come up with another excuse of why she lost that election. She lost that election because of her own incompetence. That's all there is to it. And her husband apparently has even told her that. But anyway, we do not need we do not need masculinity reshaped in the United States or in the world or on the planet. It's fine. Yeah, and if you don't think that, you're Taylor Swift, I think. I don't know. No, yeah. There are some bad dudes, that's the thing, I'm not gonna argue that, but there are some crazy, crazy women too. No one ever addresses that. Alright, this is part 3 here. Here's a little part 3 is a part of the show where you talk about everything other than politics. First thing, this is kind of involves politics, but still, this is kind of unusual. So, the FCC, which is a panel of 5 people, usually 3 people from the party in power, right now Democrats, and then 2 from the opposing party, Republicans. The FCC have approved an emergency measure to allow George Soros to buy the Odyssey group of radio stations, 200 radio stations. Now, normally you can't do this as quickly because has a lot of foreign investors and on the scheme. And if you have foreign investors, or a certain number of them anyway, and apparently this qualifies to buy radio or television station in the United States, you have to go through a security review to make certain that those people, those foreign agencies, have nothing to do with any adversaries of ours, to make certain that we don't get screwed as a country in national security issues. They waived that. It's the first time it's ever been waived. So they just gave him carte blanche to buy up these 200 radio stations. Now he's going to do it. And the theory is supposedly, what everyone thinks is that he's going to start kicking conservatives off these radio stations and installing liberal commentators. The problem with that is we already know from running the radio business, the reason there are so few liberal commentators is because nobody wants to listen to them. That's the reason. So he can do this, and there's a good possibility that a lot of these stations will just fail. I mean, I cannot emphasize this to you enough. Nobody is interested in American liberal talk radio. Liberals aren't interested in it. Nobody's interested. There's maybe 2 um, prominent liberal talk radio hosts that I can think of, Tom Hartman and Stephanie, what's her name? Not Hanson. Stephanie, I can't remember her last name. And that's it. Those are the 2 people I can think of offhand. I mean, I'm sure, you can go to some town somewhere and find them on the local level, but they're the only 2 on the national level that anybody's interested in listening to. That's the reason there's so many conservative talk show hosts, is because people listen to them. And the liberals will tell you, well, they have to listen because they need their opinion validated and all this sort of stuff. No, here's my take on this. People listen to conservative talk radios because the only place they can hear a conservative point of view ever. In the entirety of the media landscape in the United States, the entirety of it is liberal. All of it. Except for you got your Fox News and now maybe Newsmax, you know, and that's it. Now, amazingly, because Republicans have been bitching and moaning about CNN for years, and CNN is finally, I just find this really interesting. I'm going to get back to what I was talking about at the start here. See, you have the liberal media covering for the liberal politician and liberal presidential administration. I get the impression some of them have gotten tired of this. Because more and more liberal outlets have come out and said critical things about Kamala Harris, way more than they did about Joe Biden. I mean, there was until that debate in June, basically nobody ever said a single negative thing about Joe Biden. But they've been saying some, like I said, the New York Times endorsed Kamala, but it was like the weakest endorsement ever. It was basically said, well, you can't vote for Trump, so vote for this woman. That's basically what they said. So, and the same thing's happening with, same thing's been happening with like CNN. They've been complaining about her too. All sorts of stuff they drop, and it's fun. I find this kind of fascinating. I get the impression they're getting tired of carrying the water for these people, you know. Uh, uh, so, any rate, The FCC approved this transaction, and so, George Soros is gonna buy these 200 radio stations, and it looks like he wants to do more. But like I said, you can't tell people you can't force people to listen to something they don't wanna listen to, you know? So, they will put on, like, some lot a whole bunch of really nice shows and, a lot of liberal commentators and, I mean, even on television. Alright, so you got MSNBC. On the average day, Fox News has quadruple, has 4 times MSNBC's viewership, depending on what's going on. I'm making a generalization here. 4 times, and somebody did say this, and it's really true. I saw this a few days ago, somebody said this. At this point, you have to conclude Fox News as a quote unquote mainstream media because they are the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They are blowing the crap out of everybody in the news business. Their ratings are just so freaking high, it's mind-boggling. So, yeah, they are a mainstream media at this point, but they're the only conservative ones. Unless you can include Newsmax, you know, maybe a couple other smaller outfits, but yeah, so it'll be interesting what happens with George Soros. Like I said, I think there's a good possibility he'll just plain fail. That's what I think. And speaking of that, speaking of radio and television, DirecTV announced today they're going to buy the Dish Network for $1. Now, if you're wondering, well, I could have bought the Dish Network for $1. Yeah, you could have, but here's the catch. They're also assuming $2 billion in debt, which I don't think you could do. You could pay for the dollar. You could come up with that. I don't think you can come up with $2 billion more to pay off the debt. And this is some strange, weird transaction where um, DirecTV is not actually buying Dish directly. They are all right, I gotta make sure I get this. They're buying a private equity firm that then is going to turn around and buy Dish. It's something like that. It's just these damn transactions. Once you get over like $100 million, it's all hell breaks loose. No one can keep track of this stuff. You can't. But at any rate, you could have had the DirecTV or the Dish Network for $1. You could have, but no, you couldn't afford to pay the debt. And that's the reason you did it. That's the reason. Alright, so this woman named Anna Sorokin, she was a woman who was thrown in prison a couple years ago for pretending to be an heiress. I can't remember who. Was it Russian or something like that? Well, they put her on Dancing with the Stars, and everybody got upset because they thought, "Well, this woman does not deserve this opportunity," and she probably doesn't. Well, anyway, she was the first person eliminated last season. And very famously, this was made in a meme. One of the judges asked her, "What have you learned from this experience?" And her one word reply was nothing. Now she's going to sue ABC because she says, and this is all right. I'm laughing. She says that being on Dancing with the Stars, they exploited her. No shit. No, they did? Really? You got exploited. Oh my god. Isn't everybody on Dancing with the Stars being exploited? Isn't it mutual exploitation? It's like they get C-list celebrities on here to bump up their careers, and they get quote unquote stars. I mean, the whole entertainment business is built on exploitation, and you got exploited. Wow. What a fucking revelation. Oh my god. It's like, okay, good for you, honey. Yeah. And finally, this is I got to get to the UFO stuff. The Canadians released a picture or several pictures of a UFO that Canadian fighters chased over Alaska. I think this was last year, I think. And they just released the photos now. They're quite clear, I have to say. It's like there's a big flying machine in the sky there, and they're chasing it. They can't catch it. So people are wondering why they waited so long to release the pictures. And then the other question is, well, why did they release them at all? If you're not going to release them, in timely fashion, what's the point of even releasing them? But they did. So kudos to the Canadians because we can't get our crap together when it comes to that sort of stuff. I want to thank you folks for watching and listening. This is probably one of the last times I'll ever say watching. From that point, from next point on, it's gonna be listening. And we got our debate panel tomorrow night. Supposedly, I mean, the betting odds are not with Tim Walz. You know, supposedly he told the Kamala administration campaign team, when they were vetting him as the vice presidential candidate, he told them that he's not debate well, and apparently he feels very insecure about this. So they're trying to lower the expectations, you know, where the Trump campaign is trying to raise expectations. They went out and said, well, he's actually a very formidable debater. No, he isn't. I think Vance is just going to you know, completely wipe the floor with him. But we'll find out tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. So our panel tomorrow night is Tim Conaway, Larry Newman, and Don Zorro, and I'll be here too, directing traffic. I love these guys. I have to tell you, if you haven't watched this before, I mean, I don't know how many of these debate panels we've done now, half a dozen, uh, and for all sorts of stuff. But we get some of our best viewership off of these debate shows and the month in review shows that we do. People like these guys, and they have an undeniable chemistry, and I think that too, which is I love having them on. So anyway, that's tomorrow night. We're starting at 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central. That's when the debate is scheduled to finish. So we're starting an hour earlier from our normal start time. No, half an hour. Excuse me, half an hour earlier. Now, after tomorrow night, we're taking the week off. We're taking Wednesday through Tuesday. We're coming back on Wednesday, October 9th, and then the show will start at 9 p.m. Eastern permanently. So it's 2 hours earlier than it starts now. That's a permanent change. And like I said, we're making a whole bunch of other changes too. But you'll be around for the ride, and you can see those. I want to thank you all for listening and watching. I'm Jim Peters. Good night, Esperanza. Good night, Uncle Donnie. And good night to you, wherever you are. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take care.